The United States started a war with Vietnam without proper justification. A Vietnamese military patrol boat started the war by attacking the U.S. ship Maddox, which was anchored in the Gulf of Tonkin. This was the so-called Gulf of Tonkin incident. However, it was later revealed that the Gulf of Tonkin incident was a self-made play to establish the cause of the United States' participation in the war. It was August 7, 1964, when the U.S. began bombing Vietnam in earnest. The United States continued the war for 11 years from then until April 30, 1975, when the South Vietnamese government collapsed. In 1968-69, when the war was at its most intense, a whopping 550,000 American troops were stationed in Vietnam, and the annual number of Americans who participated in the 11-year war was over 2.8 million. During that time, the United States dropped unimaginable amounts of explosives on Vietnam. Among them, there was a large number of defoliant that dried up not only plants but also people. In any case, the Vietnam War recorded close to 60,000 American casualties. Similarly, Afghanistan had made full use of the immense mountain range known as the Hindu Kush Mountains, and people who were well adapted to the local climate and the terrain in the fight against various empires such as Britain, the Soviet Union, and the US. The Hindu Kush Mountains were natural trenches that did not budge against any bombardment. Deep in the mountains, armies could not find hiding places even with advanced equipment. High and steep mountain ranges with a maximum height of more than 7,000 meters stretch over 1,000 kilometers to Pakistan, and it is a harsh climate with a temperature difference of 30 degrees or more between night and day, summer and winter. It is quite difficult to survive in such a place. Outsiders who are not accustomed to the environment cannot stand it. Vietnam was similar. Jungles and tunnels were Vietnamese weapons. Moreover, situations such as the Battle of Dien Bien Phu continued throughout the war. All the people disassembled all kinds of heavy weapons and carried them on their shoulders. In the war against other ethnic peoples, that is, invading forces, the whole people in the nation proved to be a transport and supply unit. Endless guerrilla warfare in which civilians and soldiers could not be distinguished eventually forced the United States to flee. During the war with China in February 1979, Vietnam defeated the Chinese forces with only women and militia. At that time, Vietnam was at war with Cambodia, and China took advantage of the situation that regular troops were moving to the Cambodian front. An attempt to rob an empty house, but they were just humiliated and kicked out. Afghanistan, Vietnam all made good use of terrain. Invading forces coming from outside usually only rely on troop numbers and superior weapon performance to rush in. In general, a large country that invades assures that it will win the war because it has more troops and weapons and is stronger. However, the people of small countries with no power that are invaded take advantage of the climate and topography. Natural terrain such as sky, wind, land, mountains, and rivers. The side with the most power temporarily conquers the country, just like the US and British militaries did in the past. But in Vietnam's case, it is only the beginning of a conflict. The guerrilla-style armed uprising of the local people continues and afflicts the invaders endlessly. Once conquered, a country is not so easy to rule. A man named Yael Joje, who was a great advisor to Genghis Khan, told these truths about 800 years ago. The final rationale that this war ultimately has no possibility but to be won by Ukraine is that most of the wars that have been fought on us so far have been won by the side with a strong cause in the long run because there are many helpers and supporters. Today, thousands of people from all over the world have come forward to help Ukraine, make a donation, or protest in support of that country. Needless to say, there were not a few volunteer soldiers who entered Ukraine, and the international support has been huge. Neighboring countries such as Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, the 3 Baltic states, Poland, and the 3 Caucasus countries, Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan, have been actively helping Ukraine. Germany has set up a special federal military fund and has pledged to continue increasing its defense spending to 2% of GDP in the future. It is, in effect, a declaration of German rearmament. And Sweden and Finland, which have maintained neutrality toward Russia for a long time, broke the military non-alignment principle, provided arms to Ukraine, and announced that they would join NATO too. So, war without allies is difficult. Countries that wage war without cause have no power to get help. Russia has obviously waged an unreasonable war. Moreover, the world witnessed the slaughter in Bucha, the sight of Ukrainian civilians being killed by execution, with their hands tied behind their knees, has angered people around the world. Bucha people are probably not the only ones who were slaughtered. There must have been such genocide wherever the Russian occupied Ukraine. If that continues, Russia will become more isolated. Due to the development of the internet, people all over the world are now correspondents for SNS carriers and media companies. Now Russia will seek an exit strategy. Putin will think about getting out of the quagmire. Even if he acquires a minimal amount of territory, Putin will use it as a cause for withdrawal and a means of propaganda for domestic use. Russia will advertise that it has posted a great achievement. The minimal territory Russia wants is another access to the Black Sea, the port city of Mariupol in the Sea of Azov. Russia is a country with deep interest in the port, which is not frozen. It is a country that risked itself for this port that does not freeze. In the 2014 invasion of Ukraine, the Crimean Peninsula, where the port of Sevastopol is located, was taken first. However, Crimea is not connected to Russia by land. If Ukrainians risk their lives and block the road, Russia will not be able to access Crimea by land. Russia wants an unfrozen port connected to their land, which is Mariupol, the southernmost part of Donetsk in the Donbas region. The economic value of this place is also quite high. It is on the shortest course from the Sea of Azov to the Middle East through the Black Sea and the Mediterranean Sea. Ukraine has been exporting various resources such as grain, steel, and coal to the Middle East through this place. That's a big reason why Russia has an eye on Mariupol. So Russia is trying to take over Mariupol by firing vacuum bombs that are not in use internationally. Russia will continue to raise the level of offensive in the future. In any case, the armistice negotiations will proceed one way or another. In the Korean War, an armistice negotiation began a year after the war actually broke out. From then on, for 2 years, one side continued to fight and the other side negotiated. All modern warfare is like that. It was the same during the Vietnam War and the Middle East War. They fought fiercely on the front lines and negotiated at the same time. The armistice agreement was continued as the Paris Agreement or the Oslo Agreement. During the negotiation, the parties to the war fought fiercely for even an inch of land to gain a little more advantage on the battlefield. Ukraine may end the war at this point as well. If Ukraine fights any longer, there is a high possibility that the whole country will fall into an impossible of recovery. Ukraine would be biting the bullet, but it is highly likely to concede Donbass and Mariupol in a small way and look toward the future.